Alabama QBs have a bit of a reputation. Typically, they've always been put in the perfect situation for a QB to succeed, with recent examples being Mac Jones and Tua Tagovailoa, having a plethora of weapons like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. It garnered them some criticism during their pre-draft process as well, with concerns of how they would translate to the NFL. Whatever your opinions are on these QBs in the NFL, it's undeniable the talent that surrounded them and the success that came with it. Current Alabama QB Bryce Young did not have this luxury in 2022. When Bryce Young had Jameson Williams, a first-round pick in the 2020 draft, and John Mechie, a second-round pick in the 2020 draft, as his disposal in 2021, he went ahead and just won the Heisman, casually putting up almost 4,900 passing yards in 47 touchdowns, rightfully playing himself into a surefire top 10 pick. 2022 was not so kind to him, as Alabama failed to put the same caliber talent around them as they always had in the past. While Alabama missed out on the college football playoffs this year, this was in no way due to Young's performance, as he still put on tape why he is the QB1 in the 2023 NFL Draft and that he's truly a special player. This video will be broken down into two main parts. First, I'm going to run through his just general strengths as a player and what I believe makes him so special, and just what he generally does well. The second part will be more focused on the specific traits that I just love so much about him, why I think he's such a special prospect and easily deserves the QB1 title and to be the number one overall pick. There is an extensive list of things to just simply love about Bryce Young. To begin, he's just accurate. He's an accurate thrower of the football to all three levels, especially when working over the middle of the field in the intermediate game. He isn't a pinpoint passer, but he can absolutely kill you with his accuracy and throw some seeds across the middle of the field and outside the numbers, but again, especially over the middle of the field. That's the money zone for him. He's incredibly efficient when working over the middle of the field, and he's just so good at laying throws over and between defender and zones, like on a corner route against cover 2, he can beautifully layer throw into that hole. On the same note, his ball placement is safe, and he does a fantastic job of keeping the ball away from defenders when throwing to his receivers, mostly putting the ball away from defenders and making sure his receiver is the only player who can make a play on it. He doesn't have the quickest processor, but he does see the field very well and can dissect a zone and fit throws very nicely into the soft spots of the zone. And while I wouldn't necessarily say that his arm is a true strength for him, what is a strength is his ability to get velocity and zip on his throws when he can really step into them. He can rip the ball across the middle of the field. He can rip it outside the numbers. He can make a throw. There have been multiple times on tape where he made a throw that across the field, opposite hash out route throw, and he can just really put some velocity on it and zip it to anywhere he needs to go. He is absolutely capable of firing darts over the middle field, outside the numbers, making any tight window throw that you need him to. And I'll expand on this in greater depth and how it factors into his other traits later, but he's also a plus athlete. He isn't the freak that Anthony Richardson is, but he's extremely mobile and can certainly make plays with his legs. He's a bit of a playmaker himself, and at this point, it's clear how much this can contribute to an NFL offense. Bryce Young has a lot to like, as I've just laid out. There are three primary traits that I want to focus on in this video though, and these three traits that really stick out to me as special and unique for a college quarterback. These three traits for him are his ability to throw with fantastic anticipation to his receivers, his natural innate sense for pressure and pocket presence, and has what I believe to be legitimate clutch or it factor, whatever you want to call it. These traits were on display through his entire collegiate career, but one game that puts them all on display was against Texas this past year, so I will be focusing a lot on the Texas game in this segment. But just in general, I want to talk about these traits and how he showed them throughout his entire collegiate career. Let's start with his ability to throw with anticipation. This is not an incredibly unique trait to have, but the consistency and quality Bryce Young does it with is what's impressive to me. On a consistent basis, he showed at a high level his ability to work with elite timing and anticipation, often throwing his receivers open, opposed to waiting for his receivers to come open. Reading the leverage of a defensive back came with ease and often knew exactly where to go with the ball and exactly how to time it up with his receiver. Comparing this to other college QBs that I personally looked at in the past few years, I've only been doing this for a few years, but this is a glaring difference from what I've seen in the past. And it's something that is crucial for the NFL. NFL Open and College Open are two extremely different things, and Young proved his ability to throw NFL Open caliber balls. This isn't to say that he didn't have his fair share of wide open receivers at Alabama. He definitely did. I mean, he was playing with Jameson Williams and, like I said, John Mechie, and some great talent at Alabama. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not trying to deny that at all. But there were still many moments on tape where he would still have to make a throw where he had to have perfect timing with his receivers on like deep comebacks or out routes. Especially in 2022 when the receiver talent was just not that great. He was always working on time and in structure on these plays where the timing was so crucial, which is a trait that I just love to see ready to go for the NFL. Let's take a look at this play against Arkansas. Alabama looks to be running a slot fade concept on the field side, with the slot running the fade, obviously, and this outside receiver running a quick hitch. The tight end runs what looks like a stick or a quick out, but the primary focus of this play here is the slot fade concept here on the outside. It's where Bryce Young looks first and looks to be the primary read. I'm not an expert on defense, and it's definitely not my strong suit, so I don't know for sure what the exact coverage call is here, especially when you look at the linebackers in the boundary side, but what I'm seeing is Arkansas only rushing 3 and dropping a bunch of people into coverage, with the field side looking like man-to-man. If anyone knows what's happening on the boundary side or what's happening overall in this play, please let me know, because I'm always trying to learn more. The cornerbacks are both playing off coverage, and the cornerback lined up on the slot is in pretty good position to defend this route, and the receiver can't get a clean release up the field. Bryce Young sees this disadvantageous position and instead rips a fantastic back shoulder throw down the field. There's a lot to like here. First of all, look where he releases this ball. The receiver is on the SEC logo. Bryce Young has started to throw it already. Fantastic anticipation here, knowing exactly what to do with the ball. The throw is also great. Great ball placement away from the defender, taking advantage of the cornerback playing inside, and then using the sideline and his receiver's back shoulder, how they were just wide open. He places the ball perfectly, and while it wasn't a catch, and he and his receiver may have not been 100% on the same page, I love the throw and attempt here, and this is the type of stuff that can translate to the NFL. And this route may also be a corner route, and maybe this was where the receiver and the throw was supposed to be, but either way, it's an impressive rep for Bryce Young. Moving into maybe the more valuable and unique traits that Bryce Young has, and what he put on tape, now I want to talk about just how he has excellent pocket movement and ability, how he just stays so calm and so poised under pressure. And this is where I'm going to talk more about the Texas game and how this game really encapsulates him as a prospect and as a player in general, and having a little bit of everything you need to know about him. I feel like pocket presence is a difficult trait to teach. It just oftentimes has to come naturally to a player. And that's not to say it's unteachable, but being able to come into the league already having elite pocket sense is honestly invaluable. And you can see how elite pocket sense can really, really help an offense and really change an offense. Just look at a player like Joe Burrow, who has obviously thrived despite playing with a subpar line for most of his career. And that subpar is probably putting it lightly. And also a player like Tom Brady, who was made a living off of having great pocket presence and making his whole line look better. And Bryce Young just similarly has that innate natural sense of pressure and that eternal clock where he's just so fluid and smooth when moving in the pocket. He's always staying calm and collected under pressure, and he never looks phased when the rush gets to him. He consistently keeps his eyes downfield and is always looking to throw. Even when he scrambles, he's still looking to throw. And it almost seems like the game is moving in slow motion for him, as he just moves and subtly manipulates the pocket in a way like a Joe Burrow or, again, dare I say, Tom Brady. And obviously, in college, it's not to the level of these elite QBs, but the fact that he's already so good at it, the potential is 100% there, in my opinion. Not to mention, he's just a good athlete who is just so slippery in these scramble drill situations, which I alluded to earlier when talking about how he keeps his eyes downfield during scramble drill situations. Again, he's just great. He's very good athlete, so he's so slippery in these when in the pocket too. He just evades so many sacks that you would not expect him to evade. And I mean, he makes magic happen, honestly. There's no other way to put it. He just makes magic happen in these situations. He's incredibly dangerous. And it's ironic that I say this because he does remind me a lot of a young Russell Wilson. And again, his size, while it is concerning, and I'll get to that in a bit, it also allows him to play like this sometimes, where he just makes a miraculous escape from the pocket that you just would not expect him to make. It's unbelievable sometimes. And in this Texas game, he had so many moments where the play looked dead, and he just brought it back and somehow made a positive play out of it, or just kept it from not being negative. And again, despite his size, he is tough and can take hit after hit in the pocket, and he's willing to stand tall in the pocket and take these hits. And another comp that I like is Deshaun Watson, just without the sexual assault. His play extension ability is excellent, and as I mentioned previously, he's always keeping his eyes downfield, and running is not usually his go-to option. He's going to look for the throw before he looks to run. And when the rush does get in, when pressure does get in, he's decisive and instinctual, especially, again, in these scramble drill situations. I keep coming back to it because it's one of his best traits, and he's so good at it, and it's really valuable when you look at a player like Patrick Mahomes and maybe the chemistry he has with Travis Kelce, how they're so good together when Patrick Mahomes has to work out of structure. And really, when you see what Patrick Mahomes can do with Travis Kelce, you have to fear what Bryce Young can do with a similar level of chemistry with a receiver who, again, players that go well with him and he can really bring the most out of this ability that he has to extend plays and create out of structure. On a consistent basis, he showed that he will not get fazed by the rush coming in, and while he could get roughed up by blitzes, a simple pass rush won't faze him. A 4-man rush, it won't faze him. And it's so valuable to have a guy in the modern NFL who will keep the play alive, as we've seen in the modern NFL. Again, it's just so valuable. And again, these are just traits that I think are hard to teach, like athleticism. And again, this natural ability to just know what to do in the pocket and where to go. And really, it's just, I love to be able to see that he can do this in college. The next and final trait that I want to talk about is going to sound a bit silly, and a lot of people are sick of hearing this, but Bryce Young, I fully believe he just has that it factor. He came up clutch quite often for Alabama, and again, especially in the Texas game. And I know that people hate hearing about the eye test or the intangibles, but I honestly think Bryce Young has these traits. Just to compare, I know I've brought him up a couple times, but I mean, I think he's at this point top 5 quarterback in the league, so I'm going to keep bringing him up, and I think he shares traits with Bryce Young. And I'm going to bring up Joe Burrow again. I thought Joe Burrow had these quote-unquote intangibles and these traits, and again, all he does is win. I want to take a look at this final drive against Texas in particular. This was the game or drive for me that really put him on the map for me. I already loved him as a prospect at this point and what tape I had watched of him at that point, but this game seals him to me as the QB1 because I'd entertained the idea of CJ Stroud and as QB1 at that point, but this was the drive, the game that really made me go, no, it's Bryce Young. Bryce Young's the number 1 overall pick. So let me just set the stage for you guys. Alabama was down 19-7 late in the fourth quarter, I think with less than a minute left. And Bryce Young led them on the game-winning drive to the go-ahead field goal to win 20-19. And he just made some stellar plays on this drive. The whole drive is impressive, but this play in particular really stands out in the sense that he just made a play. Just out of field goal range, and a sack could have killed Alabama's hopes with only 35 seconds and 1 timeout remaining. Pressure comes screaming off the edge, completely unblocked, yet Bryce Young just miraculously slithers out of the sack and scrambles for a first, putting the team in field goal range, ultimately winning the game for them. You don't always see this type of stuff from college QBs. In any stretch of the imagination, even for an NFL QB, this is just, it's special. This is impressive. And especially in the face of all the pressure and high tensions of this game, he remains collected and he just wins for them. This is also after a bit of a rough start in this Texas game where he didn't play all that great in the first half, but it didn't get to him. And he showed awesome resilience in this game to come out and win it for Alabama. Even against LSU later in the year when he led 2 go-ahead drives late in the game to go up on LSU and kept them in this game the whole way through. And Alabama was not the same team it usually is in 2022, and the talent surrounding Young was not up to the same standards it was for Tua or Mac, as I mentioned earlier, or any other Alabama QB of the past, to be honest. I would go as far to say that Bryce Young had to put the team on his back in games like against Texas, LSU, and even Tennessee, which they lost against LSU and Tennessee, but through no fault of Bryce Young. Alabama's defense gave up 52 points against Tennessee, and in spite of legitimately average to below average wide receivers, the offense still put up 49, and they barely lost. These receivers this past year really were not all that good. They were dropping passes left and right. Young would throw them a dime and it would just brick right off their hands. It's uncharacteristic of an Alabama receiving core, but you watch them this past year and it just was not that good. Young showed some true resilience this year, and he won them games this year off his back, winning them Texas, and also Ole Miss to a certain extent, and coming so close to beating LSU. And just one last point that I think relates to this is that he's so efficient in the red zone. He makes plays when it matters most. If it's 3rd down, 3rd and goal, he will make a play. He will do what it takes to score or get the first down or get the touchdown. He'll scramble for it, extend the play, he'll run around, and he will make a play. He understands situational football better than most college QBs do, and he makes the plays when he has to. And really what it comes down to is that all 3 of these things just really play into each other so well. And his excellent pocket presence and play extension ability allows him to be clutch when he has to, and his anticipation allows him to make plays when it matters most. He just does everything right. Not actually, as we're going to talk about now, but he does most things right. I don't think Bryce Young has a lot of things he needs to worry about, but there's definitely some things you could fix up, but for the most part, I think he's extremely polished, and he can come in right away and start day 1 for a team. I kind of alluded to this a bit earlier, but now I'm just going to talk about it a little bit more, expand on it, in that he doesn't have an elite arm. And while it doesn't limit him at all, really. It's not elite. He's not, like I said earlier, he's not a freak. He's just not a freak athlete. He doesn't have a freak arm. He doesn't run a 4.4 like Anthony Richardson, but he just doesn't have the best control he could on deep throws. And by no means is he inaccurate down the field. In fact, he's, for the most part, incredibly accurate down the field, and he really can hit any throw at all three levels, again, like I said earlier. But there just are times where you'll see where he will struggle to truly command it downfield, and he did misfire or overthrow at times. Again, this is not to say he's not inaccurate downfield. It's just something, again, to keep in mind that there were moments where he struggled to throw downfield. And while I did say he's excellent when working under pressure, I wanted to distinguish this from against the blitz. When extra rushers came at him, he was inconsistent sometimes, whether it's his blitz pickup or just working against it. He had moments where he would freeze, or he would get paranoid and nervous and bail from the pocket when he didn't need to, or he would make an ill-advised throw. And he did have good moments against the blitz. There were times where he showed high intelligence and knew exactly how to pick apart a blitz. So this is mainly an inconsistency they need to worry about, and I do believe that a good coach should be able to clean this up for him. And like most college QBs, he could speed up his processor. He's generally good at processing a defense, and he's really good at finding holes in defense and working in between the holes in his own. And he will work through progressions, but it wasn't necessarily rare for him to miss open receivers and just kind of gloss over a certain area of the field. And this is a nitpick. I'm going to say that. I think this is a nitpick. However, it's going to be hard to find a college QB who processes much better than he does. And if you really want him to be an elite quarterback in the NFL, he's just got to speed it up a bit. Well, the first three things I just mentioned are mostly nitpicks. He does have one legitimate concern, and that is his size. I think it legitimately is a concern. He's a small guy, obviously. He's got a very slender frame. I think he's only listed at 6 feet, which isn't incredibly short, but yet that goes with the fact that he's very skinny and, again, slender, like I just said. You have to be worried about injuries and him taking big hits. And like I said earlier, I kind of think he reminds me a lot of Russell Wilson. I compare him to Russell Wilson probably, but Russell Wilson has a lot more size on him. He's probably weighs more and he's just bigger. And also someone like Kyler Murray, they're just both bigger than Bryce Young. While they might not be as tall as him, they weigh more, they have more power. And they're not saying they're powerful guys, but they have more power than Bryce Young. And they are two very short QBs who have had great success in the NFL. So I'm not counting out Bryce Young because of this. Absolutely not. Now, I do believe that this is being overblown to a certain extent, as it's not like he has an injury history, but it is something to keep in mind as an NFL team. And it's probably a legitimate reason that a lot of teams just wouldn't draft him. And do I agree with that with my own philosophy? No, not at all. Especially when prime Russell Wilson is one of my favorite players of all time. And when you see what Bryce Young can do on tape, I don't care how short he is. The guy can ball. But NFL teams may disagree. There's a lot to love about Bryce Young. He's accurate, mobile, and clearly smart. And that's all right on tape. And that alone makes him a damn good prospect. He has certain traits that I just broke down that not all college quarterbacks have, such as his anticipation when throwing his receivers open, and he just works so well on those anticipatory throws I talked about earlier. I know I've drilled this into the ground, but his pocket presence is something that I just don't think can always be taught, and it's eerily similar to some of the elite quarterbacks I mentioned earlier. And the fact that he's this good at this already, it's exciting to see what he possibly could do in the NFL with some development. The tape is all there. It's 100% all there. All the skills, I broke it down, it's all there. But I, again, just want to reinforce this last point, that something that impresses me so much about him is that legitimate it factor. 2022 came with way more adversity than most Bama QBs face, with a lackluster receiving core and an average to honestly below average O-line. But he has shown over 2022 that he can and will put a team on his back, and when the time comes to win, he's a guy that you can trust.